With Trump set to take office in January, there are obviously major implications for the U.S. Supreme Court. So the court is at 6-3 right now, and Trump's election all but guarantees that Justices Alito and Thomas, at 74 and 76 years old, will both step down during his term, which would afford Trump the ability to appoint at least 2 more justices, bringing the total to a full majority of the court appointed by Donald Trump himself. And with a majority in the Senate of at least 52, but likely 53 seats, there won't even be any bulwark against even an extreme pick, meaning the court will not only stay as conservative as it is right now, but it'll remain there for decades. And frankly, there's not much that Democrats can do other than possibly to replace one aging justice on the left, Sonia Sotomayor, who is 70 years old, while we still have the opportunity with a Democratic president and a Democratic Senate. That won't change the composition of the court, but it could prevent a situation like the one that happened with Ruth Bader Ginsburg from happening, where the warning signs were there, and yet we don't do enough to stop it, which doesn't seem to be very persuasive for Justice Sotomayor herself, who is expected now to remain on the Supreme Court despite her age and despite the uncertainty regarding when, again, Democrats will control both the White House and the Senate. Now, in fairness, I want to go over the reasons for Sotomayor stepping down and the reasons for her not to. So the reason for her to do it is because the only thing worse than a 6-3 court is the possibility of a 7-2 court. And frankly, we do not owe anything to Supreme Court justices. We shouldn't feel beholden to people. We should be focused and beholden to our agenda, to our values, to our mission. Sonia Sotomayor is not our God or our significant other. She is not some deity. She is not entitled to our undying, everlasting support. The people who work in government are vehicles to enact our agenda that we all believe in. And when they themselves become an impediment to that mission, then they should step aside in service of that mission itself. Now, the reason for Sotomayor not to, and there are 2 reasons here. First, let's not pretend that us out here litigating somebody else's entitlement to their own job isn't presumptuous and ageist and all of that. I get it. But perhaps the more persuasive argument against it, though, is that this would be one of the fastest Supreme Court confirmations in U.S. history, and it would require the full support of the U.S. Senate, which means that Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema would both need to approve a rushed Supreme Court confirmation. I don't have any indication as how they would vote one way or the other, but would you feel comfortable having Sotomayor step down, leave a vacancy on this court, and then rely on Manchin and Sinema to toe the line of a party that they haven't exactly seen eye to eye with, to the point where one of those senators literally just left the party? And look, maybe they say yes, maybe it's no problem, but also maybe they don't. It's a risk if Sotomayor stays on the bench, but clearly there are risks in the event that Democrats try to replace her too. And it's not just the Supreme Court. Republicans are now entering a moment where they'll have the ability to reshape the entire judiciary in the same way that Donald Trump did in his first term in office. Here's NBC's Sahil Kapoor discussing exactly that.
Joining me now is NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor. Sahil, you have a great new article out about this. How prepared are Republicans to see conservative judges during Trump's second term? And what are you expecting to see from his administration this time around?
Extremely well prepared, Yamiche, is the short answer. They will have, of course, President-elect Trump going back to the White House. They will have a Senate majority of at least 52 seats. They're ahead in Pennsylvania right now. If they hold on to that, it's 53 seats. And Democrats can do nothing to stop them because judges and Supreme Court justices can now be confirmed by a simple majority of senators, and they will likely have party unity on this project, even if a couple of moderates decide to break away from some of their judges or justices that they consider too extreme. Republicans still should have the votes to push them through. So one thing I expect is for them to certainly confirm the vacancies that are left for them on the lower courts. There are 47 of them right now. Democrats are expected to use the lame duck to try to confirm some judges. I see former President Trump just put out a post on Truth Social saying there should be no judges approved during this period of time, suggesting in the lame duck. There's nothing Republicans can do to stop Democrats here. But once they have control in January, there's also a lot of attention being paid to the Supreme Court. There's not a vacancy right now, but there's quite a bit of chatter in conservative legal spaces about the futures of 2 aging conservative justices, the oldest ones and the most right-leaning ones. Justice Alito at 74 years old right now, Justice Clarence Thomas at 76 years old. Many are wondering if they're going to see the next couple of years as an opportune moment to retire, to have their seats secured in conservative hands for 10, 20, 30 more years. It wouldn't change the 6-3 margin, Yamiche, but it would give them a much longer time, make it a lot harder for Democrats to cut in to that 6-3 margin.
Well, Sahil, as you bring up those two older justices, there's also, of course, talk of Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who was, of course, appointed by former President Obama. So there are some Republicans, or I should say some Democrats, who are wondering whether or not she should retire during President Biden's remaining time in the White House. The theory is that Democrats would then replace her with a younger liberal judge. It wouldn't, as you said, change the balance either. But in some ways, people are saying this would sort of ensure that Democrats at least don't lose anything. So this morning on Meet the Press, Senator Bernie Sanders was questioned about this very theory. Take a listen to what he said.
Some Democrats behind the scenes quietly talking about the possibility, should Justice Sotomayor step down, to allow President Biden to appoint someone who's younger. She's only 70 years old. Is that something that you would support? Do you think she should step down?
No, I don't.
Have you heard any talk of this?
A little bit, yes. I don't think it's a sensible approach.
So, Sahil, how real of a possibility is this?
It seems very unlikely at this time, Yamiche, in part because Democrats have, another 6 or 7 weeks left in the year before they have to hand over the Senate. So she would have to retire very quickly, and they would have to move very quickly. Now, there is precedent for this. Back in 2020, when Justice Ginsburg died, Republicans did the confirmation of Justice Amy Coney Barrett in 1 month flat, which is less time than Democrats have now. So if Democrats are feeling very aggressive, and if Justice Sotomayor decides to retire, they theoretically could do it. I'm not really sure Democrats have it in them to do that. But the real time to have had this conversation, Yamiche, was earlier this year. And we did report on it in April. There were some Democrats who were nervous about this idea of Justice Sotomayor, whether she's going to stick around for another 4, however many years, 8 years, till Democrats get the trifecta again. And Sotomayor's defenders kind of shut it down, said, nope, that's not an appropriate thing to ask her to do. And it looks like she's staying.
All of which is to say, we are entering a tumultuous moment with risks on both sides. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I have all the answers, and frankly, it doesn't look like what I say is going to have any impact anyway. But if Justice Sotomayor stays on the bench, based on her own desire to do so, I really hope that we don't look back at this moment and regret it. I hope that eventually Democrats stop feeling some obligation to politicians and presidents and judges and start feeling some obligation to our agenda and doing what we need to do to actually get it passed. Perhaps a little less politeness and a little more shrewdness is going to serve us well, and it won't leave us high and dry against the Republican Party that has shown that they're willing to fight. We should be too. Before you go, just a quick note, if you'd like to see more of my content, which is always free of advertising, sponsorships, and paywalls, please make sure to subscribe to this channel using the subscribe button right here on the screen. And if you'd like to support my work even further, you can grab a copy of my instant #1 New York Times selling book, Shameless, available for sale right now. That link is also on the screen. Thanks so much for watching.